My son betrayed me in a way I could never have imagined. But you won't believe how I responded. This story will change the way you see family. My dear ones, your feedback means so much to me. Please let me know where you're watching from and whether you enjoyed this story. It's truly, truly important to me. Thank you so much. If someone had told me my own son, Marcus, would ever look me straight in the eyes and call me old and useless, I would have laughed and dismissed it as nonsense. Marcus was my world, my reason for waking each morning, my pride and joy. But life has a cruel way of teaching us the lessons we least expect, especially when they come from those closest to us. It happened one ordinary Sunday afternoon. Sunlight poured through my small kitchen window, casting a golden glow on the worn linoleum floor, while gospel music hummed softly from an old radio. I stood stirring a pot of gumbo, the rich aroma filling the air. Marcus came into the kitchen, and I noticed immediately something was wrong. His face was twisted into a scowl, his eyes dark and restless. "Mama, we need to talk," he said bluntly. The wooden spoon slipped slightly in my grip, splashing hot broth onto my hand. I winced, but kept my voice steady. "Of course, baby. What's on your mind?" Marcus drew in a sharp breath, his broad shoulders tense. "I've been thinking, Mama, you're getting older. Things aren't like they used to be, and, well, we think it might be best if you moved into an assisted living place." My chest tightened. "We? Who is we?" "Me and Tasha. We've discussed it, and—" I raised a hand, cutting him off. My daughter-in-law, Tasha, had always been distant and cold, but I'd never imagined she'd sway my Marcus against me. "Marcus, I raised you better than this. I've spent my entire life working hard, making sure you had everything. And now you and your wife want to throw me away like yesterday's trash?" "It's not like that," Marcus said defensively, his voice rising. "You're not as capable as you used to be. Let's face it, Mama, you're old and practically useless around here." His words felt like a sharp knife piercing my heart. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let him see me break. "I see," I whispered, straightening my back. "You and Tasha have made your decision, but understand one thing. I'm not as weak or useless as you think, and one day soon you'll realize exactly who is still in charge here." Marcus shook his head, clearly irritated. "Please, Mama, stop being dramatic." "Oh, I'm not being dramatic, Marcus. I'm being very clear," I said firmly, a quiet determination in my voice that startled even me. He sighed heavily and left the room, shaking his head. As the door closed behind him, the simmering gumbo suddenly seemed unimportant. I sat heavily at the kitchen table, my fingers trembling. In that silent moment, a fierce resolve filled my heart. If Marcus believed I was old and useless, he'd soon find out just how mistaken he was. And if he thought he could toss me aside without consequences, he was about to receive the lesson of his lifetime. I spent the rest of the afternoon trying to collect myself, but the ache of betrayal was relentless. Memories flooded my mind. Marcus as a child, laughing and running through the yard, crying after falling from his bike, proud and radiant at his graduation. The contrast between the boy I'd known and the man he'd become was unbearable. That night, sleep evaded me completely. I lay awake, staring at the shadows dancing across my ceiling, the echo of Marcus's harsh words replaying in an endless loop, old, useless. The bitterness of his accusations cut deeply, yet I refused to succumb to the pain. As dawn broke, bringing faint light into my room, I resolved to fight back. Marcus might see me as frail and outdated, but I had survived challenges far worse than this. I'd navigated through poverty, loss, and heartbreak, emerging stronger every time. This would be no different. I spent the following days carefully observing Marcus and Tasha, noting their whispers, their secret glances. It was clear something else was behind this sudden urgency to remove me from my home, my sanctuary, built from years of hard work, sweat, and sacrifice, and I was determined to uncover what it was. On Thursday morning, Pearl, my younger sister, called. She sensed immediately something was wrong, despite my attempts to hide it. "What's happening, Angela?" she pressed gently. I finally broke down, sharing Marcus's hurtful confrontation and my suspicions. Pearl listened quietly, her silence supportive and understanding. When I finished, she spoke with calm determination. Angela, you raised Marcus to be better. If he's changed this drastically, something deeper is at play. You need answers, and I'm here to help you find them. With Pearl's words of encouragement fueling my determination, I made a plan. Marcus would soon discover he'd underestimated me severely. I wasn't simply an aging woman, frail and easily discarded. I was Angela Monroe, a mother who'd battled countless storms to ensure her child's happiness, who now stood ready to protect her dignity and her future. Little did I know the path ahead was filled with secrets that would not only shake Marcus's world, but would change mine forever. If only I had known then what dark truths would soon surface, maybe I would have hesitated. But there was no turning back now. My son had underestimated me for the last time. Days after Marcus's harsh words, I found myself sitting alone in my living room, surrounded by memories frozen in time. Framed photographs lined the walls, each image a testament to years filled with laughter, tears, struggles, and triumphs. Marcus's graduation, his wedding day, the birth of my first grandchild, each memory was now tinged with an ache that had settled deep within my chest. It wasn't like me to wallow, but Marcus's words echoed relentlessly in my mind. I was determined, however, not to succumb to self-pity. I knew exactly what I needed to do next, dig into the details and understand why my son had changed so drastically. Later that day, I called my younger sister, Pearl, who had always been my confidant. "What's wrong, Angela? I can hear it in your voice," Pearl said softly, sensing immediately something was amiss. I took a deep breath. "Marcus wants me gone. He and Tasha think I'm a burden." Pearl exhaled sharply. "I warned you about that girl. She's been trouble since day one, but Marcus, that boy should know better." "That's why I need your help, Pearl," I replied steadily. "There's something more here, something they're hiding. I can feel it in my bones." Pearl hesitated, her silence heavy with concern. "What do you plan to do?" "I plan to uncover the truth, Pearl. Marcus has forgotten who I am, what I've survived, and what I'm capable of. It's time he remembers." After ending the call, I pulled out an old notebook and began jotting down my thoughts. I decided to visit their home, unannounced, the next morning. Marcus had always underestimated my resilience. It was time to remind him that age was not synonymous with weakness. The following morning, dressed carefully and feeling an unexpected sense of empowerment, I drove across town to Marcus and Tasha's house. As I approached, I noticed a car parked in the driveway, one I didn't recognize. An uneasy feeling twisted inside me. Stepping out, I quietly approached the front door, my heart pounding harder with every step. Before I could knock, I heard voices through an open window. Curiosity rooted me to the spot. "We have to move fast," Tasha's voice hissed urgently. "If she finds out about this, everything will fall apart." "Calm down," Marcus replied, "but now Mama suspects nothing. She's too old and confused." "That's exactly my point," Tasha snapped. "If she finds out about the money, she'll never leave." My breath caught sharply in my throat. Money? What money were they talking about? My ears strained to hear more, but their voices lowered to a murmur. I backed away from the window, shock turning to anger. They had betrayed me, not just emotionally, but financially too. My beloved son, the boy I had raised to be honest and decent, had fallen into greed and deceit. As I drove home, my mind raced with questions. What money? And how could my own child, the one I had given everything to, be planning such deception? This betrayal stung deeply, yet it also ignited a fiery determination within me. Marcus and Tasha thought they held all the cards, but they were gravely mistaken. They were about to discover just how powerful a mother's resilience could be. That evening, I couldn't sleep. Tossing and turning, my thoughts spun endlessly. Memories replayed in my mind, mixing sweet moments of tenderness with painful realizations of betrayal. Eventually, I rose from my bed and brewed a cup of tea, trying to calm my frayed nerves. Sipping slowly, I sat at the small kitchen table, bathed in moonlight. The silence of the night made the day's revelations feel even heavier. Marcus had always been my gentle boy, thoughtful and caring. What had changed him so profoundly? Could it truly all be Tasha's influence? Or had greed been lurking deep inside him all along? The answers wouldn't come easily, but I knew I had to confront the truth no matter how painful. Determined, I went to the small desk in the corner, pulling out stacks of papers, receipts, and letters I'd kept over the years. I began sifting through everything methodically, searching for clues. As the hours ticked by, the pile grew smaller, but my suspicions only grew stronger. Then, buried beneath a stack of old bills, I found a sealed envelope addressed to Marcus, marked confidential. The handwriting was unfamiliar, neat, and precise. Curiosity surged within me, tempered by a twinge of guilt. Should I open it? My heart pounded as I carefully tore open the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a bank's letterhead. My hands trembled as I read the words, disbelief clouding my vision. The letter detailed a trust fund left by my late husband, intended specifically for Marcus. A substantial sum had been accumulating quietly for decades. My pulse quickened. Marcus had known about this trust and had kept it hidden from me. He and Tasha planned to seize the money by moving me into assisted living, removing any obstacles to their access. Anger surged within me, mingling with profound sadness. My son had become a stranger, driven by greed and manipulation. Yet as the initial shock faded, clarity took hold. This discovery, painful as it was, provided me with exactly the leverage I needed. If Marcus thought he had control over me and my future, he was gravely mistaken. Armed with the truth, I felt my strength returning. The hurt remained deep and profound, but alongside it grew an unwavering determination. Marcus and Tasha had ignited a battle they were ill-prepared to face. They believed they were dealing with an old, defenseless woman, but soon, very soon, they would learn that the woman they had underestimated was capable of reclaiming her power and dignity in ways they had never imagined. The next morning, I woke early, determined to face Marcus and Tasha head-on. The night had been restless, filled with swirling questions and simmering anger. Now, as dawn cast pale golden beams through the curtains, I felt stronger, clearer, ready for whatever lay ahead. After preparing myself carefully, ensuring I looked composed and dignified, I drove once again to Marcus's home. The morning air was fresh and crisp, a stark contrast to the heavy turmoil inside me. Pulling into their driveway, I steeled myself, took a deep breath, and stepped out with confidence. Marcus opened the door quickly, surprise evident on his face. "Mama, what are you doing here so early?" "We need to talk," I stated firmly, stepping past him into the house without waiting for an invitation. Tasha stood in the hallway, visibly startled, her eyes narrowing suspiciously. "Angela, this is unexpected." "Oh, I imagine it is," I said calmly, meeting her gaze steadily, "but necessary. I heard an interesting conversation yesterday, something about money. Care to enlighten me?" Marcus exchanged a panicked glance with his wife. "Mama, you misunderstood. Don't insult my intelligence, Marcus. I snapped sharply, my voice commanding their attention. I heard every word clearly. "You both intended to move me out so you could access funds your father left for you. Funds you conveniently forgot to mention to me." Marcus's face paled, guilt flickering briefly in his eyes before defensiveness took over. "Mama, we were trying to protect you." "Protect me?" I interrupted harshly, my voice trembling with restrained fury. "By calling me old and useless? By plotting behind my back? Marcus, this is not the man I raised." Tasha stepped forward, arms crossed defiantly. "Angela, be realistic. The money is Marcus's by right. You've had your time." I felt my temper flare dangerously, but I forced calm into my voice. "You're mistaken, Tasha. It isn't about money. It's about honesty and respect, two qualities clearly missing in both of you." Marcus reached toward me, his voice pleading now. "Mama, please." "No, Marcus," I cut him off firmly. "You chose your path, and now I'll choose mine. Without another word, I turned and walked out, leaving them standing stunned and speechless. As I drove away, a mixture of grief and relief washed over me. The truth hurt deeply, but it also set me free to act without hesitation or doubt. Back at home, I immediately phoned my attorney, an old friend who knew my family well. Within hours, we had outlined a clear strategy to secure my assets and ensure Marcus and Tasha couldn't manipulate the situation further. Over the following weeks, I worked tirelessly, taking steps to reclaim control of my life and dignity. Each document signed, each legal measure taken, strengthened my resolve. Meanwhile, Marcus tried repeatedly to contact me, leaving apologetic messages filled with excuses and half-hearted explanations. I ignored every call, every plea, knowing his remorse was driven only by desperation. Pearl visited regularly, providing emotional support and wise counsel. "Angela, you're stronger than you realize," she reminded me gently one afternoon, holding my hand tightly. "Marcus made his choices. Now, you're making yours." The realization was both painful and empowering. Marcus, my beloved son, had lost sight of the woman who raised him, who nurtured his dreams and sacrificed endlessly for his success. Yet his betrayal taught me something profound about my own resilience and value. One afternoon, nearly a month after confronting Marcus, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. Something compelled me to answer. "Angela Monroe?" The voice on the other end inquired politely. "Yes?" "My name is Detective Harper. I have some questions regarding Marcus Monroe and his wife Tasha. Can we meet?" My heart quickened. "Of course," I replied cautiously, arranging a meeting for later that day. As Detective Harper sat across from me at my kitchen table, his solemn demeanor sent a chill down my spine. "Mrs. Monroe, Marcus and Tasha are under investigation for fraud. We've traced several suspicious transactions linked directly to accounts set up under your name." I listened, stunned but composed. "What does this mean for Marcus and Tasha?" He hesitated briefly, then replied firmly, "It could mean significant consequences if they're found guilty, but we need your full cooperation to build the case." I nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of my decision. "You have it." The detective left shortly afterward, leaving me alone once more with my thoughts. A profound sadness filled me, knowing my involvement might lead Marcus to face severe repercussions. Yet, beneath the sorrow was a sense of justice and dignity restored. Marcus had underestimated me profoundly, assuming age had weakened my mind and spirit, but he would soon understand the consequences of betraying a mother's trust. My heart ached deeply, but my resolve was unshakable. The lessons Marcus was about to learn would be harsh but necessary. He would come to understand, unequivocally, who was truly in charge. As the days passed, the investigation deepened. Detective Harper regularly updated me, sharing discoveries that painted a troubling picture. Every revelation was a fresh wound, yet each strengthened my determination. Friends and neighbors began to hear whispers of the scandal, and their supportive visits comforted and reassured me. I was reminded daily of the love and respect I'd earned through decades of kindness and integrity. Marcus's pleas became increasingly desperate, Tasha's silent hostility more apparent. Yet my decision remained firm. I would not waver in pursuit of justice. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready for the fight of my life. The investigation took a toll, but it also sharpened my resolve in ways I hadn't expected. Days blended into nights as phone calls, endless paperwork, and long stretches of silent reflection filled my world. Detective Harper's visits became part of my routine. Each time he arrived, he brought new fragments of the truth, each piece cutting deeper but also hardening my spirit. I learned to sit with the pain, to breathe through the betrayal, and to channel my heartbreak into a determination stronger than I'd ever known. One stormy afternoon, the sky dark with brooding clouds, I sat at my kitchen table with Pearl. The rain tapped steadily against the windows, a rhythm that seemed to echo the pounding of my heart. The scent of freshly brewed tea mingled with the earthy aroma of the storm. Pearl and I spoke little, the weight of everything hanging between us like the heavy clouds outside. When a knock came at the door, it startled us both. I rose slowly, opened it, and found Detective Harper standing solemnly, a thick envelope in his hand, his expression made heavy with news. "Mrs. Monroe," he began gently, "we've gathered substantial evidence. Marcus and Tasha have been funneling large sums of money into hidden accounts. Your signature was forged repeatedly. I wish I could tell you otherwise." The words washed over me like icy water, but I kept my composure. What happens now? We'll be filing charges, but there's more. Something you need to see. He handed me a smaller envelope marked personal. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. Inside were pages of handwritten notes, letters exchanged between Marcus and Tasha. I read in stunned silence as their words bled from the page like poison. Insults, schemes, contempt. They mocked my age, my kindness, my sacrifices. The woman who had given up so much for them was nothing more than an obstacle in their eyes. Each word deepened the wound, but also sharpened my clarity. Pearl reached across the table, her hand warm on mine. "Angela, you are stronger than anything written on those pages." "I have to see this through," I whispered, "for my own soul." That evening, as rain still fell steadily, I called Marcus. My voice was calm but unyielding. "Come, alone." He arrived within the hour, soaked and looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. His shoulders, once so proud, now slumped under the weight of guilt. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by shame and fear. The sight of him like that, my son reduced by his own actions, was both heartbreaking and infuriating. "Mama, I appreciate you seeing me," he began, but his voice faltered, broken by emotion. "Sit." The single word left no room for argument. Marcus obeyed, lowering his eyes. I laid the letters before him and watched recognition and dread spread across his face. "I know everything. The fraud, the lies, the contempt," I said, my voice steady, though my heart thundered in my chest. "How could you do this to me?" "Mama, I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was desperate. Tasha—" "No," I cut in. "Don't blame Tasha. You chose this path. You betrayed me for greed, for comfort, for cowardice." Marcus sobbed, burying his face in his hands. "I'm so sorry. Please forgive me." "Forgiveness," I echoed, the word tasting bitter. "Maybe one day, not today. You must face what you've done. There are consequences. You taught me that once." He nodded, broken. "I'll accept whatever comes." I watched him leave, then stood by the window, rain streaking the glass. The storm outside felt like a reflection of the storm inside me, and yet, through it all, I felt a strange peace settle over me. I had faced my greatest sorrow and remained standing. The following days were long and heavy. I spent hours with lawyers, poring over documents, ensuring that no stone was left unturned. I spoke to financial advisors, secured my assets, and worked to rebuild what Marcus and Tasha had tried to take. At night, I would sit in the quiet of my room, listening to the ticking of the old clock on the mantel, letting the minutes remind me that time was still mine to shape. Neighbors brought meals. Friends visited, strangers offered kind words and gestures that soothed my weary heart. I rediscovered my voice, my dignity, my worth. I reclaimed the parts of myself that betrayal had tried to steal. In church, during quiet prayers, I found solace, whispering thanks for the strength I still carried and asking for guidance for the road ahead. There were moments of doubt, of course, moments when memories of Marcus as a little boy would surface and tears would come unbidden. But I reminded myself that the boy I loved and the man he became were not the same, and that I had done all I could. The storm had passed, and I stood stronger in its wake, ready for whatever came next. The weeks following Marcus's confession and the filing of charges felt like walking through a dream, one where every emotion was heightened, every sound sharper, every memory brighter or darker than before. I woke each morning to a quiet house, the kind of quiet that reminded me of what I'd lost and what I'd reclaimed. The storm had passed, but its echoes still lingered in every room. The walls seemed to hum with memories, some sweet, others bitter, and I found myself listening to them in the stillness of dawn. Learning from the past while preparing for the future, I spent my days with purpose. There were meetings with lawyers, sessions with financial advisors, and moments of solitude where I reflected on the choices that had brought me here. Pearl visited often, bringing warmth, laughter, and the reminder that family wasn't always about blood, but about loyalty and love. Together, we sifted through old photo albums, the images both comforting and painful. There was Marcus as a boy, smiling with a gap-toothed grin, Marcus on his graduation day, pride shining in his eyes, Marcus cradling his firstborn. Those images haunted me, reminding me of what once was and what had been lost to the shadows of betrayal. My garden became my sanctuary. Each morning I'd walk barefoot across the dewy grass, feeling the earth beneath my feet, grounding myself in the present. I planted new flowers, trimmed overgrown bushes, and restored the small pond that had long been neglected. The act of nurturing life gave me peace. I spoke softly to the blooms, sharing my thoughts and sorrows as though they could absorb my pain and return strength. The garden blossomed as the weeks passed, and so, in a way, did I. One afternoon, I received a call from Detective Harper. His voice was steady, but kind. "Mrs. Monroe, I wanted to let you know that the case is moving forward. Marcus and Tasha will be facing court soon. I also wanted to check in on you. How are you holding up?" I took a breath, looking out at the garden where new buds had begun to bloom despite the lingering chill. "I'm stronger than I thought I'd be, Detective. Thank you for asking, and thank you for helping me find the truth. You've shown incredible courage," he said. "Many would have crumbled under this weight, but you've stood tall." His words gave me comfort, but also stirred something deeper, a realization that my fight wasn't just about reclaiming what had been taken, but about setting an example for others. I began to volunteer at the community center, sharing my story with women who felt voiceless and powerless. Each time I spoke, I felt lighter, as if the burden was being shared, the weight distributed among hearts that understood. I met women who had been deceived, abandoned, forgotten, and in them I saw parts of myself. We formed bonds, we healed together, and in their victories I found my own. As the trial approached, my nights were often sleepless. I would sit on the porch, wrapped in a shawl, staring up at the stars, seeking answers in their silent twinkle. Memories would flood my mind. Marcus's first steps, his laughter as a child, the way he once clung to my hand when frightened. How had we come to this point? What had gone so wrong? But in those hours of darkness, I reminded myself that no mother can control the path her child chooses. We guide, we nurture, we hope, but in the end, they must walk their own roads. The day of the trial dawned gray and cool. I dressed carefully, choosing a simple navy suit, my mother's brooch pinned at the collar, a symbol of strength passed down through generations. Pearl accompanied me to the courthouse, her presence a steady anchor. The courtroom was filled with faces, some familiar, some strangers, all bearing witness to the final chapter of this painful saga. I took the stand, my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. I spoke of the forged documents, the stolen funds, the broken trust. I spoke of the nights spent wondering where I had gone wrong, the days spent rebuilding my life from the rubble of betrayal. I met Marcus's gaze only once, and in his eyes I saw a storm of regret, shame, and sorrow, but no words passed between us. The time for words had come and gone. Hours passed like days, evidence was presented, witnesses spoke, and finally the verdict was delivered, guilty. The word rang in my ears, not as a triumph, but as a somber acknowledgement of what had transpired. Justice had been served, but at a cost that no sentence could repair. After the trial, I walked out into the afternoon sun, the light breaking through the clouds as though the heavens themselves offered comfort. I closed my eyes, felt the warmth on my skin, and took a deep, cleansing breath. A new dawn had begun, not without scars, but with a heart that had endured. The weeks that followed were filled with quiet victories. The community embraced me, my work at the center flourished, and my garden became a symbol of resilience. I published a small book sharing my journey, hoping it might light the way for others lost in shadows of betrayal. Letters poured in from strangers, their words lifting me, reminding me that out of pain can come purpose. And so, as the seasons changed and the garden bloomed anew, I stood at the edge of that pond, watching the reflection of a woman who had weathered life's fiercest storms and emerged stronger. I was no longer simply Marcus's mother, no longer a victim of deceit. I was Angela Monroe, a woman reborn, ready to meet each day with courage and grace. The past would always be a part of me, but it would not define me. The dawn was mine. The months following the trial brought a calm I had not known for years. It was not the absence of sorrow or hardship, but a deeper, quieter peace that came from knowing I had done all I could, from standing my ground, from reclaiming my story. My house, once heavy with the weight of betrayal, now felt like a sanctuary again. The walls, the floors, the garden all bore witness to the journey I had made, and in their quiet way they offered me comfort. I would often walk from room to room, running my fingers along familiar furniture, pausing before old photographs. These were not just objects, they were chapters of my life, reminders of both joy and trial. Pearl remained my steadfast companion. We shared long afternoons tending the garden, sewing quilts, and sipping sweet tea on the porch as the sun dipped low in the sky. Our conversations meandered through memories of our childhoods, Mama and Daddy's wisdom, long-forgotten family stories, and the dreams we once had as girls on that dusty little street in Mississippi. Sometimes we laughed until tears ran down our cheeks. Other times we sat in companionable silence, the kind of silence that only true love and shared history can make comfortable. I found joy in these simple moments, in the rhythm of ordinary days that felt extraordinary because I had learned to cherish them. The community's embrace continued to warm me. Women I met at the center would stop by with pies or fresh produce from their gardens, their faces open and kind. They thanked me for sharing my story, for showing them that strength was not about age or power or wealth. It was about heart, about standing firm in the face of heartbreak. I began mentoring some of these women more closely, helping them write resumes, prepare for interviews, or simply listen as they unburdened themselves of secrets that had weighed them down for years. Each connection healed me a little more, reminding me that I was not alone, that we are all threads in the great tapestry of life, woven together by struggle and hope. One autumn morning, as golden leaves drifted lazily to the ground, I received a letter from Marcus. The envelope was simple, the handwriting familiar yet tentative. My hands trembled as I opened it, unsure of what I would find. His words were humble, filled with remorse, acknowledging the pain he had caused and asking for nothing but a chance to make amends in whatever way I deemed right. I read it once, then again, tears falling silently onto the page. Forgiveness would be a long road, but perhaps the first stone had been laid. I placed the letter in a small wooden box where I kept treasures of the heart, Mama's locket, Pearl's first note to me after I became a mother, a pressed rose from my wedding bouquet. There it would wait until I was ready to answer. That night, I sat beneath the stars, the cool breeze carrying the scent of pine and earth. I thought of legacy. Not the kind measured in dollars or property, but in kindness and resilience, in the strength to rise after the storm. The legacy I chose would not be shaped by what was taken from me, but by what I gave, by the seeds I planted, by the love I offered freely. I began writing down my story in earnest, filling page after page with the truths of my journey. It was hard at times, reliving the pain, but it was also freeing. The words became my balm, my offering to the world and to myself. And in that moment, I felt light, ready to walk whatever path lay ahead, knowing that the dawn truly belonged to me. In the months that followed, I spoke at churches, schools, and gatherings large and small. I saw the faces of young women, old men, children leaning in to listen, and I knew my words planted seeds of hope. My garden bloomed brighter than ever, and I often found myself out there at sunrise, hands in the soil, heart full. I was no longer simply the woman who had been betrayed. I was the woman who had risen, who had chosen love and courage over bitterness. The legacy I chose was one of light, and with every sunrise I lived it. As another year unfolded, I found myself reflecting not on the betrayal that once overshadowed my life, but on the strength that had carried me through it. Each morning, I awoke with quiet gratitude, knowing I had survived, grown, and found purpose beyond the pain. My house, once heavy with the weight of betrayal, was now a sanctuary of peace. The walls that had heard my cries now echoed with soft laughter. The floorboards that had creaked beneath my weary steps now supported me as I moved with steady purpose. Every corner of my home bore witness to my journey, and in that I found comfort. Pearl remained by my side. Together, we filled our days with small joys, tending to the garden that bloomed brighter with each season, sewing quilts for new mothers, preparing meals for neighbors in need. Our bond, forged in childhood and tempered by hardship, was stronger than ever. We spoke often of Marcus, not with bitterness, but with hope. His letters continued, more thoughtful and remorseful with each passing month. I answered, slowly at first, then with greater openness. Forgiveness was no longer a distant shore, but a bridge we were building, one word at a time. The community that once watched from afar now walked with me. I spoke at churches, schools, and gatherings, sharing my story not as a tale of sorrow, but as a testament to resilience. Women and men alike approached me afterward, their eyes filled with tears or wonder, their hearts lightened by the knowledge that healing was possible. Each encounter reminded me that my pain had not been in vain, that from it something beautiful had grown. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon in a blaze of orange and gold, Marcus appeared at my garden gate. He stood there, hesitant, a man changed by the weight of his choices. I met him with a steady gaze, my heart pounding with memories and the promise of what could be. Without words, we understood. It was time. We sat together beneath the old magnolia tree where he had once played as a boy. We spoke for hours of the past, the pain, the lessons learned. Tears were shed, apologies made, and though the road ahead would still require patience and effort, a new beginning had been forged. When the stars emerged, twinkling softly above us, I felt at peace. The storm that had threatened to consume my life had passed. What remained was the strength I had discovered within, the love I had chosen to nurture, and the legacy I would leave behind, not of bitterness, but of hope, forgiveness, and grace. And as I rose to embrace my son, I knew this was the true ending of my story and the beginning of his.